Gonzaga cannot clinch the WCC title on Saturday against St. Mary's, but they can make sure the Gaels don't.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Friday and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Randy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a win. Well, folks, we're discussing Gonzaga hosting St. Mary's on senior night Saturday in Spokane. We're going to talk about what is on the line for Gonzaga, what's on the line for St. Mary's, what Gonzaga needs to do to win this basketball game, our keys to a victory in this one. And then we're going to celebrate the seniors. It is senior night after all. We're going to talk about the players who are running out of eligibility at the end of the season. We'll talk a little bit about some other players who are seniors in name, are seniors academically, but still have some more eligibility, what their future may hold. We'll get to that to close out the show. But obviously, main meat of the show, we're talking about the big time game Saturday evening, 5 p.m. tip Pacific time for this game. The game will be on ESPN2. The game, of course, Saturday, February 22nd. Sean Farnham's going to be in the house. I know that for many of you listening on Friday, he's doing his Farnham flatbread deal at the Davenport Hotel in Spokane, part of a charity thing that he's done the last few years. I'm sure he's going to talk about it on the show or on the broadcast on Saturday, but going to be a really, really fun game. Always is between these two teams. And fun is the word that we use to describe the game before it happens and after it happens. It's not really what we would use to describe the game during, at least not for me. Maybe some of you have fun watching those games. I feel like a ball of stress pretty much the entire time, especially on senior night, especially at home, especially knowing, frankly, that if St. Mary's wins this basketball game, they have clinched the WCC title. I do not want to watch St. Mary's clinch the conference title in Spokane. I don't want to see it. I don't want to watch it. They would love it. Just like Gonzaga would love clinching the WCC title in Moraga. I believe it's happened. I think it's happened the other way as well. It's part of what makes rivalries fun. That's part of why these games happen late in the season. I get it. It's fantastic, but I don't want to let that happen. St. Mary's is probably going to win the regular season title. Like it's very likely going to happen. If Gonzaga wins this basketball game, they would then be 13-3. If they win this game, they're 13-3 in the WCC. That would drop St. Mary's to 14-2. Gonzaga would be one game back of them, with each team having 2 games remaining. Still at that point, Gonzaga would have to beat both Santa Clara and San Francisco on the road, and the Gaels would have to lose either at LMU, which feels pretty unlikely the way that LMU has played, especially lately, or they'd have to lose at home to Oregon State. Oregon State, as we've talked about numerous times on the show, has been pitiful on the road. I think St. Mary's has got a really good chance of beating LMU and beating Oregon State, which means even if they lose to Gonzaga, they will eventually win the WCC regular season title. But if Gonzaga loses this game, St. Mary's has got it wrapped up. It's over. It's done. It's theirs. I don't want to let that happen in Spokane. We don't want to see that happen in Spokane. So this is a good enough reason to get a W here, obviously, for Gonzaga. Plenty of other motivation to win this basketball game, the rivalry aspect, the senior night aspect, but also Gonzaga's got 2 quad 1 wins. And folks, Baylor hanging on by a thread to be in a quad 1 win. At this point, they are 30th in the net because it was a home game for Gonzaga, even though it was at the Spokane Arena. It was still a home game for Gonzaga, so Baylor has to remain in the top 30 of the net for it to be a quad 1 win. Baylor drops one more spot, that quad 1 win goes away, again, temporarily until unless they move back into that conversation. But for Gonzaga, you'd really like a little bit more safety net there. If Gonzaga beats St. Mary's, let's put it this way. I have talked about how there is a very slim chance still that Gonzaga doesn't make the NCAA tournament. Very slim. You beat St. Mary's, it's gone. It's gone. You could beat St. Mary's, lose at Santa Clara, lose at San Francisco, lose your first game in the WCC tournament. It would be ugly. There's a chance you'd be a play-in game or just like a 10 or 11 seed. But I think if you beat St. Mary's, you're in the tournament. So that's a good enough motivation, right? We're feeling all fairly well motivated for this game without even some of the added bells and whistles of it. Obviously, last time these two teams played, Gonzaga lost that one 62-58. Was the score in Moraga, 4-point game. That was really a 2-point game, effectively. Graham Ike, phenomenal game for him, 24 points, 8 rebounds. Unfortunately, he missed what would have been a game-tying 3-pointer A poor shot selection, something we've seen a couple of times this year, not just from Graham, although he has had a few of them, but inbounded the ball with, I think, 6 seconds to go, needed a 3 to tie, or needed a 2 to tie, a 3 to win. Graham Ike yanks up a 3 in the corner with 4 seconds still on the clock. Don't really know why that was the shot, why that was the plan. It felt like poor late game management again for Gonzaga, but Graham was the only reason the Zags were even in this game, so we're not going to pick on him too much. Again, 24 points, 8 boards in a game where Gonzaga only scored 58 points. He did also have a shot blocked in the final minute by Harry Wessels, and that was a good play by Harry Wessels. Graham made a move to the rim that he would have scored. He would have scored that basketball, but Wessels got a hand on it, knocked it out of bounds. Really good play by him. Ryan Nembhard had 11. He was the only other Zag that was in double figures in that game. He also had 12 assists. If he were to get 12 assists in this game, by the way, he would tie Emmett Nahr, the record for WCC, the record for single season assists in a season by a WCC player. 284, Emmett Nahr. Ryan Nembhard, 272. So if he got 12 again against St. Mary's, he would tie that record. If he got 13, he would break it. Don't think he's going to break the record. 13 is a lot of assists in a single game, especially against a team that plays at the pace that St. Mary's plays at. But with 2 more games remaining, Nembhard's probably not going to break the record at home, unfortunately, but he'll either break it at Santa Clara or he'll break it at the Chase Center against San Francisco. More than likely, he'll break it at Santa Clara, but we will see what happens there. Braden Huff had 7 in that game, but Innocente, Gregg, and Hickman each had 4. That was it, really, for Gonzaga. They shot just 3 of 17 from 3 in that game, 7 of 13 from the free throw line. Both teams inexplicably just could not make a free throw to save their lives in that game. Gonzaga got back into the contest by playing a lot of zone defense, playing more press defense, getting out over the half court and putting pressure on St. Mary's guards that way. And it really seems to work in the second half. St. Mary's is all out of sorts offensively, missing a lot of shots, turning the ball over, uncharacteristic lack of efficiency from Randy Bennett's team, thanks to a strong and a smart halftime adjustment from Mark Few and the staff. They just couldn't quite execute down the stretch, a story that is told time and time again about this team this season, unfortunately, for the Zags. Since that game against Gonzaga, St. Mary's has gone 4-1. They actually lost their next game, which is a midweek game on the road against San Francisco. So the Dons, the only team up to this point to take down St. Mary's, is now 14-1 in the WCC, 24-4 overall. Very, very solid resume for St. Mary's. I'm still surprised they haven't been sneaking in the top 25. I'll tell you right now, I think whoever wins this basketball game probably ends up in the top 25 on Monday. Don't know that it really matters. It's nice. It's nice to have a number next to your name. It's nice when you sort all the games going on a specific day and you don't have to scroll down to WCC and you can just stay with top 25. I'll admit it. It's nice. It's convenient, but it's not that significant in the grand scheme of things. But I do believe that the winner of this game probably finds themselves in that conversation. Certainly depends what happens with some of those other teams near the bottom, like Kansas or Memphis or anybody else kind of in that end of the ranking. Maryland, who, as I'm recording, has not tipped off against USC, but if they lose that game to USC, they'll probably not be in the top 25 next week either. So some changes that we might be seeing in that conversation as well. For the Gaels, after their loss to San Francisco, they beat Oregon State on the road. They beat Santa Clara at home. They beat Washington State. They beat UP. They beat Oregon State on the road and beat Santa Clara at home. That's 2 things Gonzaga was unable to do. That is the difference between St. Mary's and Gonzaga at this point in the standings, minus, of course, the loss to San Francisco. Again, for Gonzaga, after this game, they're at Santa Clara, at San Francisco. For the Gaels, after this game, they're at LMU and at home against Oregon State. So you got to feel pretty good as a St. Mary's fan about being able to close out the regular season, even if you do not win this game. But again, for Gonzaga, 1 of 3 remaining quad 1 opportunities for the Zags. So if they don't win this one, they still got 2 more chances for quad 1 wins, assuming Santa Clara and San Francisco, who are both pretty safely above the line to be a quad 1 game on the road. Assuming they both stay in that conversation, I think that Gonzaga will have those opportunities to knock out those wins, but you feel real good if you get it against St. Mary's because it's a rivalry, because it's senior night, because it's at the Kennel, because it's the best win out of these 3 that you could capably get. Lots and lots and lots of fun things going down on Saturday night. And let's talk about what Gonzaga needs to do to actually win this basketball game. Are they going to play zone again? Are we going to see way more zone? Are we going to see more press? What is Gonzaga going to do to neutralize the Gaels and pick up a W in the McCarthy Athletic Center? We're going to talk about that coming up in just a second. Folks, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay right in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. It's great because when you win, you get paid instantly. As I'm recording this right now, there's no line for Gonzaga St. Mary's, but there is a line for Marquette at Villanova. Marquette only 1.5-point favorites, folks. They're going to win. They're going to cover. I feel very confident about that. So right now, if you're a new customer, reminder, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That is worth checking out. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we're still looking ahead to Saturday's game, Gonzaga St. Mary's in Spokane, senior night, 5 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN2. We're going to talk about what our keys to a victory for Gonzaga would be. Having already seen this team, having already played this team, having already kind of seen what adjustments Gonzaga has made overall since that game, there's kind of a lot of things that I think we'll want to see Gonzaga do differently or do more of, or certain players that we want to see step up who maybe were unable to do so the last time these two teams played. So we'll start with key number 1, aggressive perimeter defense. And folks, I know you can't see my notes, and I know it doesn't realistically matter, but I put that in all caps. That is the key that is in all caps in my notes, aggressive perimeter defense. The Zags have played very well on that end of the floor pretty much every single game since that first half against St. Mary's. From the second half against St. Mary's until now, Gonzaga's defense has been light years ahead of where it was in that Santa Clara game or that Oregon State game or even many of their other games earlier in the season. This has been a significantly improved team, not just because of the move to enter Emmanuel Innocente into a bigger role. He started in that game against St. Mary's. He'd been kind of playing a little bit prior to that game as well, but it has been a factor. Innocente's rise, Innocente's comfortability in his new role, playing 20-ish minutes per game. But it's just been kind of a bit of what appears to be a culture shift, a kind of a renewed energy on that end of the floor to be more aggressive, to be more in opponents' faces, to not be letting them get around them as easily and relying on help defense and relying on guys to kind of sag off shooters, which was the issue in the Santa Clara game and the issue in the first half of the St. Mary's game. So we have seen this team hound the ball better. We've seen this team navigate screens better. We've seen this team not abandon shooters. What I want to see in this game is 40 minutes of that. Do not let St. Mary's get open looks from 3 because you are leaving your defenders. Make them shoot over you. Make them score with a hand in their face. If they can do that, if they can prove it, if they can hit tough shots all game long and they beat you, tough. It sucks. And it's painful, but I would way rather they beat you that way than by Augustus Marciulionis getting a half step on a defender with a dribble and having Nolan Hickman or Khalif Battle or whomever rush over to try to prevent him from getting all the way to the rim, to prevent Graham Ike from picking up a foul, therefore leaving Jordan Ross or Mikey Lewis or whomever wide open to knock down a 3. That's the last thing we want to see in this game. And again, to Gonzaga's credit, they have not been suffering from that issue since this game. But there is no reason to give St. Mary's those opportunities. Make them score over you. Make them hit tough shots. Even if they're getting to the rim, yeah, obviously I understand the idea of, if Marciulionis gets to the rim a bunch of times early in the game and Ike picks up 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes, that's a problem. That is a very bad scenario. So you have to find ways to avoid that. But we've seen the screen navigation improve as such that they're not getting to the rim as easily. Guards aren't. Mikey Lewis couldn't do it. That was a huge part of the win for Gonzaga against, not Mikey Lewis, sorry, Marcus Williams for San Francisco couldn't do it. Nate Calmise from Washington State couldn't do it. Those two guys completely neutralized in those 2 games. That's how Gonzaga won. Marciulionis, I don't know if he's better than Marcus Williams or Malik Thomas. Probably. He's a very, very talented player. But like if Gonzaga can scheme to stop those guys from getting downhill and getting to the rim, they can scheme to stop Marciulionis from doing it. They can. And they will, and they should, and they need to. They need to. There's no other. I mean, they have to. If they don't, he's so capable of breaking down the offense or breaking down Gonzaga's defense and getting his guys open looks. And that's just, it's too much of a downfall for Gonzaga if that happens in this game. Key number 2 kind of goes right alongside with key number 1. Be adaptable. Be adaptable specifically on defense. What I mean by this, do the zone. do the zone. The zone worked so good in the second half against St. Mary's last time out. I don't know that you start with the zone. I'd be surprised if they did. That would be unusual for Mark Few team to do that. But I think they're going to go to it. I think they have to go to it. And I think you expect, it's a chess match. It's always a chess match. I expect, Mark Few expects, most of you listening expect, Randy Bennett has probably spent a whole lot of time over the last 3 weeks poring over that tape to figure out how his team can navigate Gonzaga's zone defense. And he's got a plan. They have a scheme. They have a plan. They are prepared to score on Gonzaga's zone defense. Any good coach would be. Even a bad coach would be. Whether their plan would work, who knows? Randy Bennett's plans, they tend to work. So my expectation in this game is that Gonzaga will start in a man and they will eventually switch to a zone, whether it's super early, whether it's the second half, kind of depends on how the game is going, but they will eventually switch to a zone. And I have a theory that St. Mary's is probably going to score on the first possession or two of this zone defense because they're prepared. They are ready. If you're Gonzaga, how do you respond to that? Do you abandon the zone very quickly? I hope no. Do you stick with the zone? And, again, it's a chess match. Now it's your move. Figure out what they did effectively and how to combat that. Do that in the middle of a game. But if Gonzaga doesn't even try the zone, you have to try it. You have to try it. St. Mary's, Zach Farmer, a good friend of the podcast, hosts the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. He said before the game that St. Mary's struggles with zone. This is a known thing prior to that last matchup. It's definitely a known thing now. So you have to be ready to use it. And even if St. Mary's gets a few looks out of it, you got to be ready to still go to it and to still use it and to still try to slow this team down and get them out of their rhythm. Not even just with the zone, with the press too. Same exact conversation. Gonzaga ran the press last time. They ran it. They always run it after made free throws, but they ran it more often in this game against St. Mary's, particularly in the second half. They did the full quarter court press. They also did the half court trap. Do more of that. Again, every once in a while when you run a trap, you're going to get scored on. They're going to get the ball out and they're going to find a way to get, and you're going to be outmatched and you're going to score. But that doesn't mean Gonzaga should abandon it. Try it. Force this team to be uncomfortable. Worse, a lot of times, this is what happened in the game back in early February, was that St. Mary's would break the trap in the sense that they wouldn't turn it over, but then they would just start getting into their offense. They're very slow, methodical, take their time offense, and already 12 seconds have gone off the clock. And St. Mary's is not as effective at running their offense when they only have 18 seconds on the shot clock. That is what happened in the second half of that game, is they had to speed up their actions. They had to speed up their offense, and they looked uncomfortable. If you let St. Mary's establish their pace and their rhythm, you lose almost every single time. Gonzaga fans are more familiar with that than anybody. You cannot let them establish their pace. The trap and the full court press, even if they break it, it still throws them out of their rhythm, and that is crucial in terms of beating St. Mary's. Key number 3 goes along with that. They're all kind of connected here. Crash the glass. Obviously, this is so unbelievably important against this St. Mary's team, especially if you're going to spend large chunks of this game in a zone defense. St. Mary's is the third best offensive rebounding team in the country. They're, per KenPom, their 39.6% rate of grabbing offensive rebounds, third in the country. Obscene. Mitchell Saxon, the second best offensive rebounder in the country. What they do, and again, for those who watched the game against St. Mary's, you saw this, is it's usually Saxon, or maybe it's Morauskas, maybe it's Wessels when he's in the game. They just tip the ball back. That's the main thing that they do. They don't always grab the offensive rebound, bring it down, go up for a second look. They just tip it back. And especially in the WCC, where there's not a lot of teams with size, Saxon, he's 7 foot. He's all of it. He's a big dude. He can just get his hands up there and get that ball knocked back. And Marcelonis or Ross or Lewis or whomever is able to track that thing down. They reset their offense at that point. If you're the defense, you have played, probably 27 or so seconds of defense and forced a missed shot. That is a dream scenario. And now you got to do it again. And it is incredibly exhausting and frustrating. If St. Mary's is able to get multiple of those offensive rebound opportunities, second chance points, that is a huge problem for Gonzaga. And as we said before, we said it last time, playing a zone defense makes it harder to crash the defensive glass. It's not complicated. When you are in a man defense, and the shot goes up, you're guarding somebody. That's the person you box out. No mystery. If you fail to do it, that's on you. When you are in a zone, it is not always clear who you are supposed to box out. There's not always somebody in your zone. And the amount of time it takes to identify an offensive player, find them, and put a body on them, you may not have time to do that in a zone defense. These shots go up quickly, so it is a challenge to rebound out of a zone. Playing a zone defense against a team that is this good at offensive rebounding is a bit of a risk, but it is worth it because of how much more out of sorts St. Mary's was offensively last time these two teams played. But having said that, if Gonzaga gives up too many second chance opportunities, if Gonzaga's one and done every time on the floor, they're on offense. If they're not getting themselves second chance opportunities, they're putting themselves in a really difficult hole to dig out of, much like what happened last time in Moraga. Key number 4 for this game. We haven't done a lot of specific player keys, but we need to make sure that when Khalif Battle leaves the locker room and comes out on the floor, that he brought his A game with him. Because if there's a player on this Gonzaga roster who's more inconsistent in terms of whether he brought his game or not, I'm not sure who it is. Some people will argue Nolan Hickman. I don't think so. Khalif Battle, the spread between when he is there, he's the best player on the floor. He is electric. He is the single most important player for the opposing defense to scheme against. He is Gonzaga's go-to option at times, or at least the most important player for them on the floor. And then there are games where he is completely absent. It almost doesn't even feel like he was on the floor. The difference between those two things this season has been startling. Just in WCC play alone, 15 games for Gonzaga in WCC play. In 7 of those 15 games, Khalif Battle has scored 10 or fewer points. I think in 3 of those games, he has scored 0. 10 or fewer in 7 of those 15 games. In 6 of those 15 games, Khalif Battle has scored 20 or more points. So 7 of them is 10 or less. 6 of them is 20 or more. And then only 2 games in between. One was 15 points, one was 16 points. So he's basically either going to give you less than 10 points as your starter, as one of your leading scorers, or he's going to give you a 20-piece. Tell you right now, if Khalif Battle gives St. Mary's 20, I feel real good about Gonzaga's chances of winning this basketball game. He is a poor three-point shooter, and he gets often tricked. I don't know if that's the right word, but the defense baits him into shooting threes, and he takes them. On the season, Battle is less than 33% from 3. In the WCC, Battle's less than 32, 31.5% from 3. In the last 10 games, Khalif Battle made 4 threes against Pepperdine. He made 3 threes in that home game against Oregon State. In the other 8 games, he has made either 1 or 0 threes. In some of those games, he was 1 of 7, 1 of 6, 0 of 5. Battle's continually taking 4+ three-pointers per game, and he has made 1 or less in 8 of the last 10 games. He is not a three-point shooter. He's just not. And that's okay. I think part of the issue for Gonzaga's offense is that a lot of the times when Khalif Battle gets the ball, he is in the corner. Khalif Battle is incredibly good at driving to the basket from the top of the key with his right hand. He's maybe better than anybody Gonzaga's ever had at that. And especially at drawing contact and then, of course, converting at the line. Khalif Battle's not very good at driving to the basket and scoring from the corner. So when he gets the ball in the corner, he launches threes. He's not very good at making those either. Gonzaga needs to find a way to get Khalif Battle the ball in opportunities where he can score. And in this game in particular, drive right into Mitchell Saxon. I would much rather Khalif Battle have a game where if he's not going to have a good game, I would much rather it be because he drives into Saxon, he drives into Wessels, he drives into the crowded St. Mary's front court, throws shots up, misses them, and throws his hands up at the refs. I know it's frustrating to watch him do that, but I would rather he do that than miss 3 threes in the corner. Because if he does that, eventually he's going to get a call. Eventually he's going to get 2 points at the free throw line, and more importantly, he's going to put Mitchell Saxon on the bench in foul trouble. Gonzaga got Saxon fouled out of this game last time, and it nearly got them a W. Harry Wessels made a great play, but I was happy that St. Mary's, in order to win that basketball game, needed their backup center who played 9 minutes to block a shot from one of the best scorers in the entire conference. And he did it. Again, hats off to him. But that Gonzaga put themselves in a position to win because Mitchell Saxon was on the bench. Let Khalif Battle cook. Let him get to the rim. Let him try to score on these guys. Let him try to get to the free throw line. Because if he's the version who scores 2 points or 0 points and just bombs a couple threes and then sits for most of the rest of the first half, Gonzaga is going to have a lot of challenges winning this basketball game. Last but not least, key number 5 kind of goes along with that one. Shocker. Shot selection. The ball should be going through Graham Ike in this game. That's kind of obvious. We've been saying that pretty much every single game. He had 24 of Gonzaga's 58 points last time. Clearly, he's on the floor. Ball goes to Graham Ike. Let him go to work. If he's struggling, let Braden Huff go to work. If that's not working, then you start trying to do some different things. Maybe that's where you get Battle more involved. Maybe that's where you get more pick and roll or even pick and pop actions with Huff and Ike trying to bring Saxon away from the rim. But ultimately, this game should start with Gonzaga forcing St. Mary's to defend Graham Ike. That's how it should start, and it will. Graham Ike's got the highest usage rate in Gonzaga basketball history. Braden Huff has the second highest usage rate in Gonzaga basketball history. These two guys get the ball all the time. That's not going to change. But also, St. Mary's going to try to bait Gonzaga into shooting a lot of threes, not just Khalif Battle, but the whole team. Last time out, Gonzaga 3 of 17 from three. 3 of 17. I don't hate 17 three-point attempts. I don't think that's a terrible number for Gonzaga. I don't think they need to, you should only shoot 10. No, you need to be able to, you need to keep the defense honest. You need to shoot threes. You just need to make more than 3 of them. You need to shoot better from 3 in that situation. I don't think the answer for Gonzaga is shooting less threes necessarily. Gonzaga's about 35% from 3 on the season. St. Mary's holds teams to about 32%. To me, that little difference, that feels like it could be enough for a win. If Gonzaga shoots at their percentage, so 35 would be like 7 of 20. I don't want to see Gonzaga shooting much more than 23s in this game. I don't think they will. Just with the possessions, the way it works, it's hard to get that many shot attempts against St. Mary's with how slow they play. But 7 of 20, that probably does it. 6 of 16, that probably does it. But if you shoot less than that, if you shoot 5 of 15, or even worse, 5 of 16, something like that, then I start to think you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. 3 of 17 probably doesn't get it done. Like that's going to be a problem. For Gonzaga, I think you force feed the paint. You force Mitchell Saxon to defend every single possession. You try to get to the rim with Khalif Battle if you can. But ultimately, don't be afraid to shoot the 3, but don't be too reliant on it either. That's a cause for concern for this Gonzaga team in many games, and certainly against a team like St. Mary's. Well, folks, it's senior night. And while we will do postseason episodes for everyone on the roster, we're going to talk all about them in those episodes. We're also going to discuss the seniors who are leaving and those who might not be leaving after this season. All that coming up in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we're still getting ready for Gonzaga's game against St. Mary's on Saturday night. As we've said a few times now, it is senior night. So it will be the final game in the McCarthy Athletic Center for a handful of Gonzaga players that we know for certain, barring some kind of very surprising NCAA ruling, which at this point, none of them are all that surprising. All of these players will be playing their final game in Spokane. So we want to talk about them, honor them a little bit. And again, with the acknowledgement that for those of you who are longtime listeners to Locked On Zags, at the end of every season, we do our season in review episodes, and we do one for every single player on the roster. We talk about how their season went. We talk about it compared to the best and worst case scenarios that we laid out before the season. And then we talk about their future, what's next for them, whether it's the NBA, overseas, back at Gonzaga, whatever it may be. But what I want to do now is just some accolades, some love for the seniors who are going to be playing their final game. First up, of course, Ryan Nembhard. The best passer in Gonzaga basketball history. I mean, there's just no debate at this point that he is the best passing point guard Gonzaga has ever had. He's one of the best passing point guards in college basketball history. He's got 800 assists in his career. That is unprecedented. He's on pace to potentially get 300 assists this season. He'd be the sixth player since 1993 to do that. He's averaging 10 assists per game, which is extraordinarily rare. He has the top 2 individual most assists in a single season in Gonzaga basketball history, and he's only been here for 2 years. He's 7th in school history and assists total. And he's only been here, he hasn't even finished his second year. 7th all time in this program's history and assists. A program that has, think about all the great point guards that have come through this program. Ryan Nembhard's already put himself in the top 7 all time in assists, and he didn't even spend more than 2 seasons here in Spokane. He also has the highest assist rate in school history, the highest assists per game in school history, and the highest minutes per game in school history. Ryan played a lot. He distributed the ball at an elite rate. His turnover rate was unbelievable. He's also 5th in steals per game in Gonzaga basketball history, an extraordinary player who will be dearly missed when he departs because of his ability to impact the game with his distribution skills. Next up, Nolan Hickman, 4-year guy, one of 2 4-year guys that we're talking about here, a consummate Zag. I'm going to have a lot of words about Nolan Hickman at the end of the season because I've heard a lot of words about Nolan Hickman during the season. A lot of hate, a lot of what I would consider misplaced anger towards Nolan Hickman, a lot of belief that he doesn't impact the game as much as I believe that he does. People who've told me that I have no ability to change their mind, in which case, why would I try? It's not up to me to change your mind about Nolan Hickman if you don't want your mind to be changed about him. But he's a player whose roles changed every single year. He was a backup point guard as a freshman, played big minutes his freshman year, moved into the starting point guard role as a sophomore, and frankly, wasn't great at being a starting point guard. I think we can all acknowledge that. I think some people are still harboring feelings of frustration at him from 2 years ago, but he wasn't great in that role. Gonzaga made some adjustments, sort of turned into point guard Drew Timme, at times. Hunter Salas ran the point more that year. Nolan Hickman then the next year moves to an off-ball role, plays complementary to Ryan Nembhard, and thrives. And then this year, thriving even more. One of the best individual single-season three-point shooting seasons we've ever seen from a Gonzaga player. 44.5% from three this year for Nolan Hickman, career 39.5% shooter, 214 career makes. That's 10th all-time in Gonzaga basketball history. 10th most three-pointers made. When he makes 5 more, which he should do in the next 3 games, he will pass Gary Bell, or he will tie Gary Bell. 6 more, and he will pass Gary Bell for 9th all-time in Gonzaga three-point shots made. One of my favorite Zags, a polarizing player, and I think it's reasonable to find him a bit polarizing. I understand that, but I do find him to be somebody who's not gotten as much appreciation for his willingness to adjust roles, his love of the kennel. He dances with the student section every game. He seems like somebody who just loves being here and has played a valuable role on this team for a half decade now. Ben Gregg is next. Ben Gregg, last remaining Zag from the 2020-21 national championship team. He was on that team as basically a high school senior. After his season was canceled because of COVID at Clackamas High School, he was able to, because of NCAA rules, he graduated early, started at Gonzaga the second semester, and was on the basketball team. He played very little, but he was able to actually play for that team that went to the national championship in his pre-freshman year effectively. Ben Gregg's been an extraordinary glue guy. That is his role. He does the dirty work. He's a great offensive rebounder. He's a great overall rebounder. He's a good defender. He does what's asked of him. It's been hard to watch him not have the same three-point shot that we expected from him. Shot 37.7% in each of his last 2 seasons, has been well below that this year. That's been hard. I can't imagine it's been harder on anybody than it has been on Ben Gregg. But I love what he brought to this team. And I think a look through Gonzaga's record books really kind of exemplifies who he is and who he's been in Spokane. He's 5th in steal rate in Gonzaga basketball history. He's 8th in block rate in Gonzaga basketball history. He is 8th in box plus minus. That is literally just how effective you are per 100 possessions when you're on the floor. 8th in Gonzaga basketball history. 9th in Gonzaga basketball history in defensive block box plus minus. 10th in defensive rebound percentage. 8th in offensive rebound percentage. So he is one of on a per minute basis, which is an important distinction. On a per minute basis, Ben Gregg is one of the top 10 best offensive rebounders in Gonzaga history, one of the top 10 defensive rebounders in Gonzaga history, top 5 in terms of getting steals, and top 10 in getting blocks. An incredibly valuable glue guy, do it all, dive on the floor, gritty type basketball player, and another one who will be similarly to Anton Watson, not quite the same level of certainly not offensive juice for Ben in his final year that Anton had, but a similar player in a lot of ways, and a guy who will be dearly missed as well when he departs after this season. Last but not least, Khalif Battle. We already talked a little bit about Khalif Battle. I'll just say the quote from Mark Few. He's unlike any other player we've had in this program. Mark Few said that before the season, and I've come back to it multiple times on the podcast because I think that was a premonition of the good and bad that we were going to see with Khalif Battle. And I think some of it is the Zags not really knowing what to do with Khalif Battle. Like, again, having him post up in the corner and bomb corner threes is not a strength of his and has been proven time and time again this season. But when Khalif Battle's on, he's the best player on the floor. He's extremely volatile. He's extremely talented. He's highly emotional. He's a really fun player to watch. He's an extremely frustrating player to watch. I think everybody listening to this will agree with that. But he's pretty high on the fun meter because when he's having fun and when he's playing well, man, he can take over a game unlike almost anybody we've seen in a Gonzaga uniform. Currently, he's having the second best single season free throw percentage in Gonzaga basketball history, 93.6%. Derek Rivio first, Derek Rivio also third, Derek Rivio also fourth. So Khalif Battle's the only player to break up the Derek Rivio free throw percentage train at the top of Gonzaga's record book. And then last, Joe Few. I think Joe Few technically could come back because of red shirts for him. So I don't know if he's going to be done or not. Has to be pretty wild for Mark Few to see Joe graduating from Gonzaga, though. I mean, that's just for any parent. That's certainly a monumental moment in your life, but I'm sure it's extra special for Mark at this point. Joe's most known nationally for getting absolutely obliterated by VJ Edgecombe in Gonzaga's first game of the year, but he was playing against Baylor. That's pretty cool. He scored against UP this year. He scored against Pepperdine this year. What I loved about Joe was that he always played hard. Like everybody kind of gets it. Like he's the coach's kid. Like, he's 5'10", 10 maybe. Like he didn't, he's not the size, not the, even other walk-ons tend to like look more like D1 basketball players than Joe does, but Joe goes out there and busts his butt and he works hard. And I'm like, I tell you right now, Mark Few would never let him be on the team if he didn't. If Joe was out there trying to do anything silly or do anything showboaty or anything like that, like Mark would gank him probably off the whole team just immediately. He would not put up with that. And I respect Joe for not doing that and for seeming to, he goes and tries to score when he's got chances, but that's because he's a basketball player. Like that's what he's supposed to be doing out there. So I'll be sad to not see Joe if he's done after this, to not see him coming into the game as a walk-on, although we'll get to see more of Joaquin Reyes more. And frankly, he's been a lot of fun to watch as a walk-on as well. Then the last thing here, we'll just say quickly, this is the senior year for Michael Ajayi. It is also the senior year for Graham Ike, and I believe the fourth year for Steele Venters. So academically, I believe all three of these guys are seniors. None of them are going to be out of eligibility after this year. Michael Ajayi, because of a recent NCAA ruling that says that players who are currently seniors who have exhausted their eligibility due to using junior college years now have an extra year while they go through some litigation and court cases about whether junior college years should count against your overall number of years at the Division I level. So we'll be curious. For now, Michael Ajayi's got one more year of eligibility. Does he choose to use it and come back to Gonzaga? Does he choose to use it and hit the transfer portal? Does he choose to not use it and start his professional basketball career? To be honest with you, I have no idea. I don't. I think the fact that he's played better as of late might be a good indication he is going to come back. At this point, I would feel more confident about Michael Ajayi coming back to take on a bigger role next year than I did a month ago or 6 weeks ago when this news first came out. And I was like, I don't really know what Michael's going to do. Now Ben's gone. The guards are all gone. There's a hole for him to fill a bigger role next year. I think he might be back. I don't think Graham Ike is back. I do think Steele Venters is back. This is nothing more than a gut feeling. They have not indicated anything. The general consensus is that this is Graham's final year. We don't know that for sure. With Steele, I don't see any reason that he would leave if he is eligible to play, or if he is healthy enough to play. Obviously, if he is not given the green light to resume basketball activities, or if he just chooses for his own sanity to not try to return to the floor, he could end his career medically. And I frankly would not be surprised if that happens, but I would be surprised if Steele chose to try to play somewhere else. I think if he wants, he's wanted to play at Gonzaga his whole life. He's been here for 2 years and hasn't gotten a chance to step on the floor in an actual game. If he has any chance of being healthy enough to play Division I basketball again, he's going to do it at Gonzaga. I feel very strongly about that. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Thanks again for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Enjoy the game on Saturday. It should be a really fun one. Again, maybe not during the game, but it'll be fun leading up to it. It'll be fun after the game. Hopefully even more fun if Gonzaga gets that much needed W. We'll be back either way on Monday to recap the game and get you ready for Gonzaga's final 2 regular season games of the season. Have a fantastic rest of your day and weekend. And as always, especially in a rivalry week, go Zags.